Hey guys, tonight we're venturing into the vast landscapes of southern Africa, where millions of ancient stone circles dot the terrain like forgotten whispers of a civilization that mainstream archaeology barely acknowledges. You're standing on red earth under an endless sky, surrounded by perfectly arranged stones that have been quietly waiting for recognition for potentially hundreds of thousands of years. The wind carries dust that might have witnessed the rise and fall of entire peoples whose names we'll never know, and honestly, you probably won't survive the cognitive dissonance of what we're about to explore together. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and what time it is where you are. I love seeing our global bedtime community come together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself walking across the Mpumalanga province of South Africa, where researcher Michael Tellinger has documented over 100,000 stone circle structures scattered across the landscape like ancient breadcrumbs. The mainstream archaeological community largely ignores these formations, dismissing them as cattle enclosures from recent centuries. But you notice something peculiar about their construction there: too perfectly circular, too precisely aligned, and far too numerous to be simple livestock pens. Your boots crunch on the dry grass as you approach what locals call Adam's calendar, a stone circle that some researchers claim could be 75,000 years old, making it potentially older than any known human settlement. The stones stand about waist high, arranged in a perfect circle with astronomical alignments that would make ancient astronomers weep with envy. Historians still argue whether these structures represent the remnants of an advanced ancient civilization, or simply the agricultural practices of more recent inhabitants. But you can't shake the feeling that something profound happened here long before recorded history began. The sheer scale becomes apparent as you realize that similar stone circles extend across an area larger than most European countries. From aerial photographs, you can see them stretching to the horizon, circular shadows that create patterns visible only from above, as if someone designed them to be seen by eyes in the sky. It's like discovering that your backyard has been hiding a massive archaeological site, except this backyard happens to be the size of several states combined. Asterisk, you continue your journey deeper into this stone circle mystery, where the numbers become almost incomprehensible. Tellinger's research suggests there might be as many as 10 million of these structures across southern Africa, figure so staggering that it challenges everything we think we know about ancient population densities and construction capabilities. The mathematical precision of their placement creates geometric patterns that would require sophisticated surveying knowledge. Yet, conventional archaeology dates most human technological advancement to much more recent periods. Walking between the circles, you notice they're not randomly scattered but follow specific topographical features, ridgelines, water sources, and mineral deposits. Many are connected by what appear to be ancient roads or channels, creating a network that spans hundreds of miles. The Blaubuschkroll stone ruins represent just one small section of this vast system, built by the Bokoni people using techniques that archaeologists are still trying to understand. Your fingers trace the weathered stones, feeling the weight of time in their surfaces. These aren't crude piles of rock, but carefully selected and positioned megaliths, many weighing several tons. The precision required to move and place them suggests either a much larger population than previously thought possible, or construction techniques that we've somehow forgotten. Some researchers have noted similarities between these African stone circles and megalithic sites found on other continents, raising questions about possible ancient connections that mainstream academia prefers not to address. The quirky reality is that you could spend your entire life walking between these circles and never see them, or there are simply too many. If you visited one circle per day, it would take you over 27,000 years to see them all, assuming you never took weekends off or stopped for snacks. Historians still argue whether this represents evidence of a lost advanced civilization or simply the accumulated building efforts of many generations. But the mathematical improbability of such widespread construction using primitive tools becomes harder to ignore with each new discovery. As the sun sets behind you, casting long shadows between the stone formations, you begin to understand why this topic makes conventional archaeologists uncomfortable. The implications of accepting these structures as evidence of ancient advanced civilization would require rewriting significant portions of human history, and academia doesn't particularly enjoy rewriting textbooks. Asterisk, you wake up the next morning in your imaginary campsite, surrounded by the gentle humming that seems to emanate from the stones themselves, though that might just be the wind playing tricks with the circular formations. Local inhabitants have reported unusual acoustic properties in many of these stone circles, with sounds carrying differently within their boundaries than in the surrounding landscape. You test this yourself by clapping your hands, noticing how the sound seems to resonate and linger in ways that physics textbooks would struggle to explain. The morning light reveals details you missed in yesterday's exploration. Many of the stones show evidence of having been shaped or worked, despite claims that they're simply natural fieldstone arranged by farmers. Tool marks, deliberate grooves, and what appear to be symbolic carvings suggest a level of craftsmanship that goes beyond utilitarian cattle enclosures. The ancient connection between these African sites and megalithic structures found in Egypt, Europe, and even South America becomes more apparent when you examine the construction techniques and astronomical alignments. Your breakfast consists of trail mix and the growing realization that you're standing in the middle of what might be humanity's oldest and largest archaeological site. The stone circles aren't isolated phenomena, but part of a continental network that includes terraced agriculture, ancient mining operations, and sophisticated water management systems. Some researchers suggest these structures were built by the same civilization that created the mysterious ruins found throughout southern Africa, connecting them to ancient gold mining operations that predate known historical periods. The mainstream historical fact that most people learn is that sub-Saharan Africa had no significant stone architecture before European contactor, claim that becomes increasingly difficult to maintain when you're literally surrounded by millions of precisely constructed stone circles. The quirky tidbit that archaeologists prefer not to discuss is that many of these circles align with celestial events, suggesting their builders had advanced astronomical knowledge that supposedly didn't exist in ancient Africa. Historians still argue whether these alignments are intentional or coincidental, but you notice that the probability of random stone arrangements accidentally aligning with solstices, equinoxes, and specific star positions becomes mathematically absurd when multiplied across millions of structures. It's like claiming that a million monkeys randomly typing would accidentally produce the complete works of Shakespeare, technically possible, but requiring more faith than most religions. Asterisk. You spend your third day exploring the connection between the stone circles and ancient mining operations, discovering that many of the formations are positioned near what appear to be prehistoric gold mines. The relationship between these structures and mineral extraction suggests a level of geological knowledge that challenges conventional timelines of human technological development. Your metal detector starts going crazy near certain circles, indicating the presence of metals that shouldn't be there if these were simple. Agricultural enclosures. The scope of ancient mining in southern Africa becomes apparent as you realize that some estimates suggest over 75,000 ancient gold mines dot the landscape, many of them connected to or surrounded by stone circle formations. These aren't small prospecting holes, but extensive underground networks that would have required significant labor forces and sophisticated engineering knowledge. The mainstream narrative about African technological capabilities starts to crumble when you're standing next to evidence of industrial-scale mining operations that predate known civilizations. Your exploration reveals that many stone circles are positioned at precise distances from mining sites, as if they served specific functions in the extraction and processing of minerals. Some researchers suggest they might have been used for or processing water management, or even as astronomical calculators for timing mining operations according to celestial events. The precision of their placement suggests a level of planning and coordination that would require centralized authority and advanced mathematical knowledge. The quirky reality is that if you tried to recreate this mining and stone circle network using modern equipment, it would represent one of the largest construction projects in human history. Yet somehow an ancient civilization accomplished this feat using tools that archaeologists claim were limited to stone and wood. The mainstream historical fact is that gold mining in Africa began with Arab traders in medieval times, but the physical evidence suggests mining operations that are orders of magnitude older and more extensive. Historians still argue whether these ancient mines were created by indigenous African civilizations or by unknown peoples who left no other traces. But you can't help noticing that the stone circles seem to mark territories, claim mineral rights, or serve as boundary markers for an economic system that we don't fully understand. It's like discovering that your great-grandmother was secretly running a multinational corporation. The evidence is there, but it doesn't fit the family stories you've been told. Asterisk. On your fourth day, you begin to appreciate the astronomical sophistication embedded in these stone circle networks. Many of the formations align with specific celestial events, creating what researchers describe as a vast astronomical calendar spread across the African landscape. You use a compass and star chart to verify these alignments yourself, discovering that the precision rivals that of famous sites like Stonehenge or the pyramids of Giza. The mathematical complexity becomes apparent when you realize that these alignments account for for the precession of the equinoxes, a 26,000-year cycle that requires centuries of careful observation to detect and calculate. This suggests that whoever built these structures had not only advanced astronomical knowledge, but also maintained consistent cultural and scientific traditions across multiple millennia. The implications for our understanding of ancient African civilizations are staggering, yet mainstream archaeology continues to treat these alignments as coincidental. Your smartphone's astronomy app confirms what ancient builders somehow knew without modern instruments. The stone circles mark significant celestial events with remarkable accuracy. Some align with the rising of specific stars, others with solstices and equinoxes, and still others with more complex astronomical phenomena that would challenge modern astronomers to calculate. The precision suggests not just casual skywatch, but sophisticated mathematical modeling of celestial mechanics. The mainstream historical fact is that advanced astronomy developed in ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt, with sub-Saharan Africa contributing little to early scientific knowledge. However, the evidence surrounding you suggests that African astronomers might have been creating the world's largest astronomical instrument, while other civilizations were still figuring out basic agriculture. The quirky tidbit that makes archaeologists uncomfortable is that some of these alignments point to stellar positions that would have been accurate tens of thousands of years ago, suggesting either incredible antiquity or knowledge of astronomical precession that supposedly wasn't discovered until ancient Greece. Historians still argue whether these astronomical alignments represent sophisticated scientific knowledge or lucky coincidences, but you're starting to suspect that the real question isn't whether ancient Africans had advanced astronomy to whether they had astronomical knowledge that surpassed what we give them credit for. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen we mentioned? Well, this is like discovering that ancient Egyptians were also secretly running NASA. Asterisk. Your fifth day brings you to the realization that these stone circles might represent evidence of the world's first urban planning project. The network of circles, connecting roads, and associated structures suggests a level of regional organization that would require sophisticated administrative systems and long-term planning capabilities. You trace the ancient pathways between circles, noting how they follow optimal routes that account for topography, water sources, and strategic positions. The urban planning becomes more apparent when you examine the circles from aerial photographs, revealing that they're arranged in clusters that resemble city districts or administrative zones. Each cluster seems to serve specific functions, some near mining operations, others near water sources, and still others positioned for optimal astronomical observation. The level of coordination required to plan and execute such a vast network challenges our assumptions about ancient African political and social organization. Your GPS device reveals that many of the stone circles are positioned at precise mathematical intervals, creating geometric patterns that extend across hundreds of miles. The spacing suggests a standardized measurement system and surveying techniques that would be impressive even by modern standards. Some researchers have noted that the distances between major circle clusters correspond to ancient measurement units found in other civilizations, raising questions about possible cultural connections or shared knowledge systems. The mainstream historical fact is that urban planning developed in ancient Mesopotamia around 4000 BCE, with African cities emerging much later through contact with Mediterranean civilizations. However, the evidence suggests that southern Africa might have hosted one of the world's first examples of regional urban planning, predating known examples by thousands of years. The quirky tidbit is that if you tried to build a similar network today, it would require satellite navigation, computer modeling, and massive coordination between multiple government agencies. Yet somehow, ancient builders accomplished this using tools that archaeologists claim were primitive. Historians still argue whether this apparent urban planning represents intentional design or the accumulated result of random settlement patterns. But you notice that random processes rarely produce mathematical precision across continental scales. It's like claiming that all the world's major cities accidentally ended up connected by highways that happened to follow. Optimal engineering principles technically possible, but requiring more coincidences than most people are comfortable accepting. By your sixth day, you begin to understand the water management systems associated with the stone circle network. Many circles are positioned to control water flow, direct rainfall runoff, or mark the locations of underground water sources. The sophistication of these hydraulic systems suggests engineering knowledge that rivals modern watershed management techniques. Your examination of the terrain reveals that many stone circles are connected by channels, terraces, and what appear to be ancient aqueducts. These water management features create a network that could have supported much larger populations than conventional archaeology suggests were possible in ancient southern Africa. The engineering principles involved demonstrate understanding of hydrology, soil conservation, and sustainable agriculture that wouldn't be out of place in a modern environmental science textbook. The water management becomes more impressive when you realize that it's designed to work with the region's irregular rainfall patterns, storing water during wet seasons and distributing it during droughts. Some of the stone circles appear to function as settling ponds or filtration systems, using principles that modern water treatment facilities still employ. The level of environmental engineering suggests a civilization that understood long-term sustainability in ways that our current industrial society is still learning. The mainstream historical fact is that sophisticated water management developed in ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, with sub-Saharan Africa relying on simpler techniques until much later periods. However, the evidence around you suggests that African engineers might have been creating continental-scale water management systems, while other civilizations were still figuring out basic irrigation. The quirky tidbit that makes hydrologists scratch their heads is that some of these ancient water systems still function today, continuing to manage water flow after thousands of years without maintenance. Historians still argue whether these water management features represent intentional engineering or natural erosion patterns that humans later modified. But you notice that natural processes rarely create the geometric precision and systematic organization visible in these networks. It's like discovering that all the world's rivers accidentally carved channels that happen to follow optimal engineering principles, a coincidence that would make even the most optimistic statistician nervous. Asterisk, your seventh day reveals the agricultural sophistication associated with the stone circle network. The circles are often surrounded by terraced fields, irrigation channels, and what appear to be ancient crop storage facilities. The agricultural techniques evident in these systems suggest farming methods that could have supported populations much larger than conventional estimates for ancient southern Africa. The terracing systems extend for miles around major stone circle clusters, creating agricultural landscapes that demonstrate understanding of soil conservation, crop rotation, and sustainable farming practices. Some researchers suggest these agricultural systems could have supported populations in the millions, challenging assumptions about ancient African demographics. The precision of the terracing and the integration with water management systems suggests agricultural engineering that wouldn't be out of place in modern sustainable farming operations. Your examination of soil samples around the circles reveals evidence of ancient cultivation techniques that enhanced soil fertility and prevented erosion. The agricultural methods appear to have been designed for long-term sustainability, using principles that modern permaculture advocates are rediscovering. Some of the terraced fields show evidence of having been continuously cultivated for thousands of years without significant soil degradation. The mainstream historical fact is that intensive agriculture developed in the Fertile Crescent around 10,000 years ago, gradually spreading to other regions through cultural diffusion. However, the evidence suggests that southern Africa might have independently developed sophisticated agricultural systems that rival or exceed ancient Mesopotamian techniques. The quirky tidbit that makes agricultural historians uncomfortable is that some of these ancient farming systems are more sustainable than modern industrial agriculture, suggesting that ancient farmers understood soil science better than many contemporary agricultural scientists. Historians still argue whether these agricultural systems represent indigenous African innovation or techniques learned from contact with other civilizations. But you notice that the integration with local climate patterns and soil conditions suggests deep, long-term knowledge of regional environmental conditions. It's like discovering that your great-great-grandmother was secretly running an organic farming operation that was more advanced than modern agricultural universities. The evidence is there, but it doesn't fit the narrative you've been taught about technological progress. Asterisk, on your 8th day, you encounter the metallurgical evidence associated with the stone circle network. Many circles contain remnants of ancient smelting operations, sophisticated furnaces, and evidence of techniques that challenge conventional timelines of technological development. The metallurgical sophistication suggests knowledge of alloy creation, temperature control, and/or processing that rivals ancient civilizations known for their metalworking expertise. Your metal detector reveals traces of various metals around the circles, not just iron and copper, but also more exotic alloys that would require advanced metallurgical knowledge to create. Some researchers have found evidence of steel production techniques that supposedly weren't developed in sub-Saharan Africa until much later periods. The furnace designs show understanding of thermodynamics and combustion principles that demonstrate sophisticated engineering knowledge. The scale of metallurgical operations becomes apparent when you realize that many stone circles served as components in vast industrial complexes. The circles might have functioned as workshops, storage areas, or processing facilities in a continental-scale mining and metallurgy operation. The level of industrial organization required would necessitate complex supply chains, specialized labor forces, and administrative systems that challenge our understanding of ancient African societies. The mainstream historical fact is that iron working spread to sub-Saharan Africa from the Mediterranean world around 500 BCE, with more advanced metallurgy developing through later contact with Arab and European traders. However, the evidence around you suggests that African metallurgists might have been creating sophisticated alloys and industrial processes thousands of years earlier. The quirky tidbit that makes metallurgists raise their eyebrows is that some of the ancient furnace designs are more efficient than early industrial era smelting operations, suggesting that ancient metalworkers understood combustion chemistry better than many 18th century engineers. Historians still argue whether this metallurgical evidence represents indigenous African innovation or techniques learned from unknown outside contacts. But you notice that the integration with local or sources and fuel supplies suggests deep knowledge of regional geology and resource management. It's like discovering that ancient people were running sophisticated industrial operations while supposedly living in the Stone Age. Contradiction that makes conventional archaeological timelines increasingly difficult to maintain. Your ninth day brings you face to face with the astronomical calculator theory. The idea that the entire stone circle network functions as a massive computational device for tracking celestial cycles and predicting astronomical events. The mathematical relationships between circle positions, sizes, and orientations suggest a level of astronomical sophistication that would challenge modern astronomers to replicate using ancient tools. The computational aspects become apparent when you realize that the stone circles encode multiple astronomical cycles simultaneously: solar years, lunar months, planetary positions, and the precession of the equinoxes. The network appears to function as a three-dimensional astronomical computer, using the landscape itself as a calculating device. The precision required to encode this information in stone circle positions would require mathematical knowledge that supposedly wasn't available to ancient civilizations. Your smartphone's calculator struggles to verify some of the mathematical relationships embedded in the circle network, yet ancient builders somehow encoded these calculations in permanent stone monuments. The astronomical computer theory suggests that the entire network was designed to predict eclipses, track planetary positions, and maintain accurate calendars across thousands of years. The level of mathematical sophistication rivals modern astronomical software. The mainstream historical fact is that complex astronomical calculations developed in ancient Babylon and Greece, with other civilizations borrowing and adapting these techniques over time. However, the evidence suggests that southern Africa might have hosted the world's largest and most sophisticated astronomical calculator, predating known examples by thousands of years. The quirky tidbit that makes astronomers scratch their heads is that some of the encoded astronomical cycles are so complex that modern computers are needed to verify their accuracy. Yet ancient builders somehow calculated and encoded them using stone circles. Historians still argue whether these astronomical relationships represent intentional design or coincidental patterns that humans later interpreted as meaningful. But you notice that the probability of accidentally creating such mathematical precision across millions of structures approaches zero. It's like claiming that a million monkeys randomly arranging stones would accidentally create a working computer, technically possible, but requiring more faith in coincidence than most scientists are comfortable with. Your 10th day reveals the acoustic properties that make many stone circles function as ancient sound amplification systems. Local inhabitants have long reported unusual acoustic phenomena within the circle's sounds that carry differently, voices that seem amplified, and resonances that create almost musical tones. The acoustic engineering suggests understanding of sound physics that wouldn't be out of place in modern concert hall design. The sound properties become more apparent when you experiment with different vocalizations within the circles. Certain frequencies seem to resonate with the stone arrangements, creating harmonics and overtones that suggest the circles were designed with specific acoustic properties in mind. Some researchers have noted similarities between these acoustic effects and those found at other ancient sites known for their sound properties, such as the whispering galleries in European cathedrals. Your voice recorder captures acoustic phenomena that are difficult to explain using conventional physics. Some circles seem to focus sound in specific directions. Others create echo patterns that don't match their apparent geometry, and still others produce low-frequency resonances that you feel more than hear. The acoustic engineering suggests that ancient builders understood sound propagation principles that modern acousticians are still studying. The mainstream historical fact is that acoustic engineering developed gradually through trial and error in ancient theaters and religious buildings, with sophisticated understanding emerging during the classical period. However, the evidence suggests that African builders might have been creating advanced acoustic systems thousands of years before. The Greeks built their famous amphitheaters. The quirky tidbit that makes acousticians curious is that some of these ancient sound systems work better than modern public address systems, suggesting that ancient engineers understood sound physics in ways that we're still rediscovering. Historians still argue whether these acoustic properties represent intentional design or fortunate accidents of stone arrangement, but you notice that the consistency of acoustic effects across thousands of circles suggests systematic knowledge rather than random luck. It's like discovering that ancient people accidentally built thousands of concert halls while supposedly just arranging stones for Cthulhu. Coincidence that would make even the most optimistic acoustic engineer skeptical. By your 11th day, you begin to understand the preservation challenges that have kept this vast archaeological site hidden from mainstream attention. The stone circles are scattered across private land, mining concessions, and areas that are difficult to access or study systematically. The political and economic factors that influence archaeological research in southern Africa have contributed to the relative obscurity of these remarkable structures. The preservation issues become apparent when you encounter circles that have been damaged by modern development, mining operations, or simple neglect. Some of the most significant formations have been destroyed or altered without proper archaeological documentation, representing an irreplaceable loss of historical information. The scale of the site makes comprehensive protection efforts challenging, even with the best intentions and unlimited resources. Your documentation efforts reveal how quickly these ancient structures can be lost to modern development pressures, urban expansion, agricultural mechanization, and mining operations continue to impact stone circles faster than archaeologists can study them. The preservation challenge is complicated by the sheer number of structures and their distribution across multiple countries with different legal and cultural approaches to heritage protection. The mainstream historical fact is that archaeological preservation efforts focus on well-known sites with established historical significance, often overlooking less famous locations until they're threatened or destroyed. However, the Stone Circle Network represents one of the world's largest archaeological sites, yet receives minimal protection or research attention compared to smaller but more famous locations. The quirky tidbit that makes preservationists frustrated is that we're losing more archaeological information from these stone circles each year than most countries discover in their entire archaeological programs. Historians still argue whether the preservation of these stone circles should take priority over economic development in regions that need jobs and infrastructure. But you notice that the archaeological value of the site might actually support sustainable tourism and research industries. It's like discovering that your backyard contains the world's largest archaeological treasure. While your neighbors are planning to build a shopping mall, the preservation versus development tension that makes heritage protection such a complex challenge. Asterisk. Your 12th day brings you to the cultural implications of accepting the Stone Circle Network as evidence of an advanced ancient African civilization. The recognition of this archaeological evidence would require significant revisions to conventional narratives about African history and technological development. The cultural resistance to these revisions reflects deeper issues about how historical narratives are constructed and maintained. The implications extend beyond archaeology into questions about cultural identity, historical justice, and the politics of knowledge production. Recognition of advanced ancient African civilizations challenges colonial-era narratives that justified European dominance through claims of African technological inferiority. The Stone Circle evidence suggests that sophisticated civilizations flourished in Africa long before European contact, contradicting centuries of historical assumptions. Your conversations with local inhabitants reveal oral traditions that describe the stone circles as remnants of ancient kingdoms and advanced civilizations. These cultural memories, dismissed by conventional archaeology as folklore, might actually preserve accurate historical information about the builders and purposes of these structures. The disconnect between academic archaeology and local knowledge represents a broader pattern in how Western scholarship approaches non-Western cultures. The mainstream historical fact is that academic history relies on written records and material, evidence that meets specific scholarly standards, often dismissing oral traditions as unreliable sources. However, the Stone Circle evidence suggests that oral traditions might preserve accurate information about ancient civilizations that left no written records, but created monumental archaeological evidence. The quirky tidbit that makes anthropologists uncomfortable is that local oral traditions about the stone circles often contain technical details about their construction and purpose that align with archaeological evidence, suggesting that cultural memory can preserve accurate information across thousands of years. Historians still argue whether oral traditions should be considered reliable historical sources or cultural narratives that reflect contemporary beliefs rather than ancient realities. But you notice that the oral traditions about stone circles often contain information that archaeological investigation later confirms. It's like discovering that family stories about great-grandmothers' secret life turn out to be more accurate than official records. Reminder that history is often more complex than academic narratives suggest. Asterisk, on your 13th day, you encounter the global connections that link the African stone circles to similar structures found on other continents. The architectural similarities between African stone circles and megalithic sites in Europe, Asia, and the Americas suggest either ancient cultural connections or parallel technological development that challenges conventional models of human civilization. The global patterns raise questions about whether ancient civilizations were more interconnected than mainstream archaeology acknowledges. The comparative analysis reveals striking similarities in construction techniques, astronomical alignments, and site organization between African stone circles and famous megalithic sites like Stonehenge, Karnak, and various American stone circles. The similarities suggest either direct cultural contact between ancient civilizations or shared knowledge, systems that spanned continents. The implications for our understanding of ancient global connections are profound. Your examination of construction techniques reveals that the African stone circles use methods that are virtually identical to those found at megalithic sites worldwide. The precision of astronomical alignments, the mathematical relationships between structures, and even the acoustic properties show remarkable consistency across continents. The global patterns suggest that ancient builders shared sophisticated knowledge systems that conventional archaeology doesn't recognize. The mainstream historical fact is that ancient civilizations developed independently with limited contact between distant regions, creating similar technologies through parallel innovation rather than cultural exchange. However, the evidence suggests that ancient civilizations might have been far more interconnected than conventional models acknowledge, sharing knowledge and techniques across vast distances. The quirky tidbit that makes diffusionists excited and isolationists nervous is that the similarities between African stone circles and megalithic sites worldwide are often more precise than the similarities between structures within individual regions, suggesting systematic knowledge sharing rather than independent development. Historians still argue whether these global similarities represent ancient cultural connections or the natural tendency of humans to develop similar solutions to similar problems. But you notice that the precision of shared techniques and knowledge systems exceeds what would be expected from independent, parallel development. Remember that astronomical calculator we discussed earlier? Well, it turns out that similar calculators might have been operating on every inhabited continent, a coincidence that would make even the most skeptical archaeologists start questioning conventional isolation models. Asterisk, your 14th and final day of exploration brings you to a quiet hilltop overlooking the vast expanse of stone circles that stretch to the horizon in every direction. The morning mist rises gently from the valleys below, softening the edges of ancient stones that have witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations whose names we may never know. You sit quietly among these silent sentinels, feeling the weight of deep time and the humbling realization that human history is far more complex and mysterious than our textbooks suggest. The gentle breeze carries whispers of ancient voices, not literally, of course, but in the way that profound archaeological sites seem to speak across the centuries about human ambition, knowledge, and the eternal desire to leave something permanent in an impermanent world. The stone circles around you represent not just archaeological evidence, but a testament to human ingenuity and the deep connections between ancient peoples and the cosmos they sought to understand. As you prepare to leave this remarkable landscape, you realize that the true significance of the African stone circles lies not just in what they tell us about the past, but in what they reveal about the limitations of our current understanding. The evidence suggests that ancient civilizations possessed knowledge and capabilities that we're only beginning to appreciate, challenging us to remain humble about the assumptions we make regarding human history and technological development. The sun sets slowly behind the ancient stones, casting long shadows that seem to connect past and present in a continuous flow of human experience. The stone circles will continue their silent vigil long after you've returned to the modern world, preserving their secrets and mysteries for future generations of explorers who might finally unlock the full story of Africa's forgotten civilizations. Your breathing slows as you take one last look at this vast archaeological wonder, knowing that somewhere in the gentle arrangement of these ancient stones lies evidence of human achievements that we're only beginning to understand. The mysteries remain patient and eternal, waiting for the day when we develop the wisdom to fully appreciate what our ancestors accomplished in this remarkable corner of the African continent. Sleep well, knowing that the world holds far more wonders and mysteries than we ever imagined, and that the gentle stones of Africa will continue their ancient watch through the quiet hours of the night, preserving their secrets until we're ready to truly listen to what they have to tell us about the remarkable depth and complexity of human civilization.